Welcome to episode 43 of the Scarlet Faithful podcast. I am your host and co-founder, Aaron Breitman, and it is my pleasure to welcome in. I've been wanting to have him on for a long time, and no better time than the day after Rutgers taking down number one Purdue at Purdue. Dave White, thanks so much for being here.
Hey, what's going on? I'm parked, just so you know. It's 3:01. I am parked and ready to talk.
Well, let's just jump right into it. Initial thoughts and just kind of your emotions of watching this game last night.
Oh my God, that game was crazy. That game was crazy. It was so back and forth, and I don't know. I guess I'm trained as a Rutgers fan to wait for that lead to go away for the other team to make the run. And when Cam hit that three with like 10 seconds left, I screamed so loud that my son Ben, who's a fan but wasn't watching, was upstairs, and he comes up the stairs. He goes, "What?" And I got very superstitious at that moment. I'm like, I cannot tell you. I will tell you in 10 seconds. Go away from the stairs. Do not come down here. And then with 0.4 seconds left, I told him to come down. And as soon as he came downstairs, Caleb traveled. And I was like, are you kidding me? But I mean, it was just great. It was great. And just seeing the way this whole, I don't know, this whole basketball era has gone is just amazing.
Yeah, it really was amazing. And it's funny you bring up the Caleb thing at the end, because my wife I was watching with, and, she just looks at me and gave me this face like, she's like, it is never, she's new to rooting for Rutgers. So, I mean, not new, but we've been together, over a decade now, but not like us. And she's just like, why is it always like this?
Just every time. I mean, when he hit that three, I was like, there's still 10 seconds left.
Right. Yeah, totally. But I felt the same way.
That play Purdue ran at the end reminded me so much of the play they ran at the end of the overtime game in 2020 when they ran out of time. It was almost the exact same thing. Like, they dumped it out, they dumped it in, they couldn't get open, and then they got an open shot, but it wasn't, it was rushed. So
yeah, that's a good point. I thought that last play was unbelievable, just in the sense of Rutgers was just not going to allow him to beat them.
Yeah.
And that, to me, as great as this defense has been, I think that's another Pikiell trait where defensively it's not just about their relentless effort and they're the way they're so versatile this year, but I think he's always been really good at trying to take out the best player on the other team defensively, and it's always a team effort. It's never one guy.
Right. I mean, they just doubled down, and like I think Carino said, the way they pushed him off the block so he couldn't get a good look. They tried to set him up twice. It was great.
Yeah, well, I had people tell me, "Oh, he wasn't trying to score." I was like, "Of course he was trying to score. He couldn't move. He couldn't do anything."
Right. It was just such good defense, and Cam having the peace of mind, or that's not the right phrase, but to take this shot fake and then the one dribble to his left was just really incredible.
Well, that's what I thought was the best part of it. Was I think you and I have talked enough. Like, I've always thought he had it in him to be a big shot taker for this team. But I love, it wasn't that he made the shot; it was how he made the shot. And I loved how Mulcahy, he didn't force it. He took what the defense gave him, and he created open space for Cam in that position. And then Cam was smart enough to be patient and calm enough. And I thought the most remarkable thing was, he hadn't taken a shot in over 13 minutes.
Really? He hadn't? I didn't even realize that. Oh, that's incredible. I didn't know that.
I went back and looked at it, and he had made a three with 13 minutes to go. And then he soon after got the, I don't know if he already had 3 fouls at that point, but, he was disjointed the last 12 minutes of the game with 4 fouls. He was on the bench for a good period. So to basically come back cold and take that shot in that situation, I just think, I actually think that's a big reason why fans should expect he does have the mentality to be able to be that shot taker for this team moving forward.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I won't say who you compared him to in basketball history, but we don't want to put that on him. But, he was tough and he made the right play, and he's clearly starting to get his feet under him. I think losing Caleb and Paul early on put a little too much pressure on him where he wasn't ready yet. Like, he hadn't got his feet wet yet,
Totally. And I also think the other thing people were counting was he also had to learn how to play with those two guys.
Yeah.
I think that was I agree. He took on a bigger load and wasn't ready. But I also think he had to learn how to play off the ball from them. He was, Loyola. I mean, he had the ball in his hands a lot, and he had to learn kind of get into the mix. And I think Paul likewise had to learn how to get him into the mix as well.
Right, I agree. They had to figure each other out, but now they're starting to have a little chemistry. I think that was part of it with in Miami where they couldn't get him the ball.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not used to him.
Yeah.
Caleb and Paul have been together a long time, or so.
Yeah, absolutely. I think obviously we know how important he is. Just from I said it last night too. They didn't shoot tremendous from three last night, but they made 6 threes. And that's you have to make 5 or 6 threes in the Big
Yep.
Ten game. And if he's not making a couple a game, they really don't have. I mean, Andre Hyatt at times has been able to do it, but he really is their primary three guy, and they need him.
Yeah, I mean, I think Hyatt up to this point have been Rutgers' best player, and he's been really streaky. So,
Yeah.
if they can find some rhythm now and 2 games in a row at home against, I don't want to say beatable but manageable opponents, they got a chance to make some hay here in early on.
Before we get into that part, I want to touch on what you said about Hyatt, because I actually think he hasn't been the most efficient player, but he has been the one player Rutgers has had that is not afraid to take a shot and not afraid to step up in a big moment. And I think that there's value to that maybe Rutgers fans aren't as a whole accounting for in the value of having Hyatt. I think he has been very front forward in taking on a bigger role and wanting to, and he has come through in a good amount of those times.
Yeah, I mean he's very streaky, but in the first half against Wake he was huge. And he tried twice. The layup against Seton Hall, the layup against Miami. He didn't make them, but he wasn't afraid.
Right.
And that gives you another weapon at the end of the game. Because it's Rutgers. We know every game's going to come down to the wire. No easy wins.
He actually reminds me a little bit of more complete Montez Mathis in that, he's a little bit more under control, but he's willing to take that shot. But I think also defensively, I mean, Mathis was a good defender too, but Hyatt's a little more versatile and a little bit more physical, especially, and he's able to play on the block and rebound more as well.
Right. Yeah, no, he is. That's very true.
So I wanted to ask you, just in terms of that game, this was kind of a what if I posed here early this morning, but it hasn't really been discussed in that, Pikiell burned his last time out with over a minute to go. How did you feel in that moment? And how fortuitous was it that Painter, after they took the lead with a 3, immediately called a timeout, which allowed Pikiell to draw up that game-winning play?
Yeah, so when he took the timeout, I think there was 2 minutes left when Pikiell took his last timeout.
A little bit less, maybe one something, or right around. Yeah.
Yeah, so my thought was, okay, he wants to score here and just shut them down the rest of the way. He's just, Pikiell wants to win on defense. Yeah. So when he took it, I said, okay, he's mapping out, they're going to score, and he's going to just try and shut them down and then get fouled. But I think Painter taking that timeout really worked out in their favor. I mean, Rutgers traditionally under Pikiell has gotten a good look off a timeout. Yep. So giving him time to draw up a play and have a player say, I want to take the shot, really, was fortuitous. It wasn't as scrambly as we've seen when they haven't taken the shot. I love the Indiana game where Ron hit that game-winning shot, but that was kind of like, hey, trust your player and go. And this team, I don't know that they're at the trust your player and go yet. We're still figuring some pieces out. So
I agree, and I'm glad you brought up that point. I think that's an underrated point that people don't recognize with Pikiell, is that he has been tremendous in calling. I actually tried to find this stat over the summer, and nobody could find it. I even talked to different analytical companies and stuff, but I want to try to find their efficiency rate in scoring off a timeout, because I think it's got to be high. And if you remember last night, the whole run with Mulcahy down the stretch started off of a timeout, and that's when right after Caleb got hit with a fastball in the face by Cliff, and then they called that timeout, and then that's when they made the adjustment to hand off from Cliff to Paul. And then Paul took that first play off the timeout and hit that mid-range jumper, and then they were off to the races. So yeah, I think his ability to get good looks for his team off of timeouts has been really, really, I think, an underrated part of the success of the program under Pikiell.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, there are some weird bounces in that game. Like you pointed out, the fastball off the face of Caleb that made me roll my eyes. But then there was also the block on Paul where he got the ball back and got Cam open for the three. I guess that was his last shot he took before he hit the game winner, you know? So, yeah, like there were some just wacky bounces and it was a crazy game. And I don't know how other people feel, but it was stressful, but I loved every minute. Like I was so entertained by that game. You know, yeah, I had a knot in my stomach, but that's part of the fun. And I the blowouts were nice against the nobodies, you know, and I got to stand out in the hallway at the rack and see people I knew. But give me this any day of the week. Give me a tight game down to the last shot or two where I'm, you know, got my hand on my chin like this, hoping. So,
Yeah,
you know,
no, I totally agree. I don't know. I have a weird. This team is different for me in that I actually, when they played last night,
mm-hmm.
and I'm relaxed watching them because I love watching this team play when they play together like they're able to, and it just, I don't know, it's like it's obviously I want them, you know, they need to win some big games here, but I just have confidence in them when they're playing the way they played last night. I had a lot of confidence that they were going to end up winning, and even though, you know, they that it got dicey there at the end, I don't know. There's just something about this team. I'm not very good at verbalizing it. I don't know. I have talked about their chemistry, the vibe on this team. They just seem to have something that is special about this group that you almost can't explain. But it just I don't know. For me, it breeds confidence as a fan watching them. I just feel confident in watching them play.
Yeah, I mean, the way they play defense, you have to be confident because you know they're going to be in every game.
Yeah.
In every one of their wins, they haven't given up 65 points. And they gave up over 70 to Temple once, and the other losses were under 70 points.
Yeah.
So I mean, the defense is ridiculous. Now they need to score a little more. Maybe they're gonna need a couple games where they score a little more. But I mean, you know they're gonna be in every game. It's just a matter of whether the breaks go their way.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we delve into kind of big picture, what's next? I did want to bring up, we talked about it earlier today about, and I got it wrong last night because my math was off in the rapid reaction, but it was 7 years ago this week that Rutgers lost at home to Purdue by 50 points.
God, was it this week?
Yeah, it was January 5th. It was if you remember the 76 team came back and
Mm-hmm.
honored at halftime, and it was Eddie's last season. They lost by 50 points, and that was, you know, I think if you I don't know if you remember this, but we talked after that, and that for me, that game was when I gave up on Eddie Jordan being able to turn things around, and I realized, okay, like this isn't working out. I can't remember if you felt the same way, but I know we discussed it at length. And I don't know, for that, it's amazing how it's full circle. 7 years later, they deliver. I don't know. We were talking about before. I mean, it's one of the greatest wins in program history, no doubt. It's the biggest win, biggest
Mm-hmm.
road program history, just from a pure. You know, they never had a top 10 win on the road ever before last night. So historically, it's a huge win. But also, I think just looking back on, it's kind of a mark in time of where the program is and where they were.
Yeah, I mean, it's just I remember that game. I was in the stands for that game, and I was
God,
by myself, and I remember. I think that was the point where you and I talked, and I was like, if they don't make a change, like I'm not sure I'm coming back next year, which is the
yeah,
first time I ever thought that. And they made the change, and you could kind of see the seeds of it that first year, and but I never thought it would come this far.
yeah.
I was hoping we'd get one NCAA tournament. He'd be like a Gary Waters type,
Yeah.
and it's looking like way more than that. So.
Well, it's funny because I can't remember. I read it last week somewhere. It wasn't a Rutgers person. It was national media. And they were like, you know, Pikiell's getting the program to a point where he's gonna make the NCAA tournament every 3 or 4 years, and I'm like, what do you mean? Like they go back for a third straight year this year? Like, what do you mean once every 3 4 years? Like they're going every year right now, and as we've talked about recruiting right now, yes, it's fluid and things can change, but he really is on the cusp, I think, of having a program changing 2024 recruiting class, which opens up doors in so many ways. But I mean, people were rightly concerned going into this season, and yes, there's a long way to go. There's 2+ months to go. We know that, but the way things look today, as we're talking, things are going up. They're not going backwards.
Yeah, I mean, everybody goes through a slump. Everybody blows somebody out, and everybody gets blown out. But it's what you do with the other, I guess, 29 games. And, right now, they're in really good shape. I mean, analytically wise, they're in really good shape. It was a shame they couldn't get a win at Miami or beat Seton Hall, which would really have them sitting pretty. But, there's enough games left. I never, with those losses, I never got nervous that things were going to spiral out of control.
Yeah.
But the only thing I thought was when they lost the Ohio State game, how do I put this? They got burned and everything. And I was like, wow, this could be the difference between a really good season and a good season. And now it looks like they made up for that last night. So,
yeah. Yeah. Well, I think as a Rutgers fan, we've seen this many years in the past. There's been a domino effect, where they were so close to getting over the hump, even go back to the Bannon days and the Water days. Like they had one bad loss, and then all of a sudden they had a four-game losing streak, and wheels fell off. And with Pikiell, it just they had that 5-game losing streak 2 years ago. They had they've had moments each year, like you said, that where it looked like things were going off the rails, and then they recovered. And this team, I don't know. It's just again, it goes back to their cohesiveness. It's just it obviously affected the Seton Hall game, but then boom. I mean, the last 4 games they played about as well as you can during that stretch.
Yeah, I mean they can't play much better, and I'm sure there'll be another losing streak somewhere in there. It's not a sport where you go undefeated anymore, so they can still be good and have 9, 10, 11 losses on their record.
Exactly. I remind people that all the time. Good college basketball teams lose 10 times in a season.
Yeah.
And now, I mean, you've seen other teams make deep NCAA tournament runs, and they have 12, 13, 14 losses.
Right. Just got to get hot at the right time and matchups. And I just hope this is a season where they're comfortably in and I'm not sitting on the edge of my seat on Selection Sunday. But even that is fun. So
True. But yeah, as we talk, 16th in KenPom, 16th in net. I mean, it's kind of it really is remarkable to see them, and because yes, the Indiana win was big, and analytically it was big, but they had a lot of tough losses, but they were close losses. It was really interesting to see how those big margin of victories against the low majors really helped analytics as well. I mean, just to see them in the top 20 in both, it's crazy at this point. Now they have that signature win to throw on them, that nationally, they're I think going to be taken more and more seriously if they can continue to win now.
Yeah, I think that. So I think when we talk about like going to the NCAA's once every 3 or 4 seasons, I think people are looking at the record and saying, okay, they beat the people they should have, but they lost, to Miami and Ohio State, blah, blah, blah. But I think last night is going to be the eye opener. And if they can go on a little streak here, you'll start to see some notice by the national guys. I think people like Jerry and, you and the guys who are really close to it kind of saw it already. But, these guys don't watch that closely. So,
yeah,
I think now you'll start to see it if they're able to go on a run. Now, if they follow up with a loss on Thursday, nobody's going to care.
Yeah, so somebody freaked me out before on Twitter because they reminded me that it was last year after Purdue that they played Seton Hall and Kevin Willard.
Yep.
And they lost that game. Now they see Kevin Willard again on Thursday. And then you have Fran McCaffrey on Sunday with Iowa, which I tweeted before. I was, kind of a fan's delight this week. I would a lot more of one if they win all 3 games. But Maryland's, a veteran team. How much have you watched them so far, and any thoughts on that game?
I have not seen them at all. So I don't know. I read something that they're more a perimeter team,
Yeah,
which is an interesting matchup because I think Rutgers does really well slowing down a big guy and then having him kick it out to a shooter that's not as good.
yeah,
So it's an interesting matchup. I think, last year they went on the road to Seton Hall after that big win and
yeah,
Willard, and that's tough. I think this year, they're on the road now and they're coming home to the building's going to be crazy on
yeah.
on Thursday night, and that should only help them. So it's a different year. Maryland's kind of in a little slump right now, so we'll see what happens. Who knows? They might come out and hit 7 of 8 threes in the first half, and we're shaking our heads. But I hope not. I think Rutgers will come to play.
Yeah, I think as important as it is to win these two games the rest of the week and put them in a really, if they win Thursday and Sunday, I mean they're 4-1 in the Big Ten. They're legitimately in the conversation to win the Big
Yeah,
Ten
yeah,
25% true. But I also think, almost aside from that, it's just for this team to get a rhythm and kind of build confidence and build off of that win last night. If they can string together a winning streak out of this now, in these next four games are all winnable. Maryland, Iowa, then you go
mm-hmm.
at Northwestern, who's very good defensively, and then Ohio State next Sunday night, which is going to be wild as well. I mean, you're talking about an opportunity here where we've seen so many years where Rutgers, even when they've been good, they're 3-4. I guess it was 3 years ago they were 7-3, and that was weird. And they finished 11-9. That was the 1920 year. But the last 2 years they were in a hole, and they
Yeah,
had to fight back. So it would just be so satisfying to see them sitting up at 5-2. Who knows, 6-1. I mean, it would just put them in a position of strength. And I think where this team has been hurt over the years, even though they've had their backs against the wall and succeeded, I think it has taken a toll at the very end of the season. That fight they've had to have for 2 months just to get there. Where this year, if they could, like you said, they're in such a good position analytically. I would love to see them, obviously in the postseason, no matter what, March Madness. But if they could be
right.
there, seed, having been in there comfortably, what does that do for their mindset and their energy level going into that?
Yeah, I think the next 2 weeks can really set the tone because it's a manageable schedule. It's not a you hate to say it's a winnable schedule. Nothing's winnable in the Big Ten, but they
Yeah.
can go and beat Northwestern. I know they've had a lot of trouble with Northwestern. Northwestern matches up really well against them, but they can win all of these games. I mean, I thought last night was the toughest, and they came out with a win. So they can. Of course, Maryland came in and knocked their doors off last year,
Yeah.
when Rutgers looked like they were about to get on a roll. And Iowa is always a close game. So
Yeah.
who the heck knows?
Yeah. I mean, if you look at, I mean, they played Indiana, Ohio State, and Purdue. You could make an argument that the top three teams in the Big Ten,
Yeah.
and they, for one bad call, they'd be 3-0. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I just think, yeah, I think they can challenge for the Big Ten title. Now it's a matter of being consistent and winning the games at home that they need to win. 3 of the next 4 at home. You got to win all 3. You got to protect home court. We've talked about in the past. People think they're terrible on the road. They've won 4 Big Ten road games the last 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
They could win another 4 and 5. I mean, if you protect your home court, right, and go 8-2, 9-1, and then you win 4 or 5 big. I mean, you're talking about 13, 14 wins.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that's easily a top 4 finish, and who knows what
Slow
else.
down.
Getting ahead of myself a little bit.
I just thought of something. I may have said that they missed Cam for the free throws against Miami. I meant Ohio State. Before the commenters get me, it was Ohio State where they got to Caleb instead of Cam.
Well, and I think that was Mulcahy inbounding it to Caleb, and I think that was a moment, that teachable moment where, hey guys, this is this year's team, and
Mm-hmm.
free throw shooter. He's in there for a reason, and we have to get the new guys in the right roles. And I think that was part of Cam's kind of development with this team too, because you got to get him the ball in that spot. They didn't, and then I think you saw last night, that in the biggest spot of the season, they got him the ball and he delivered.
Yeah, very nice, very nice, and it just bodes well for the future.
All right, any closing thoughts?
First off, I think the website is awesome. I love it. You all got to go visit thescarletfaithful.com. And I will say that last night was the first time since I left On the Banks that I missed writing about the game. So, keep up the good work. And this is it's fun to watch. So,
well, thank you. And yeah, we did a whole rebuild of the site over the weekend. And, honestly, I said to my partner, I was like, listen, they're playing Purdue Monday night, number one team in the country. We got to have this ready for Monday morning because they're going to win.
yep.
And it worked out. So, yeah, we had a great run together at On the Banks. And I'm sure a game like last night had you Jones in to write something. That's part of why I wanted you to have on it today as well. But always appreciate your thoughts, and you have a lot of respect from Rutgers fans. And thanks again for being here. And we'll talk after the next big win this season. How about that?
That sounds good to me, and I'm sure I'll DM you in about 10 minutes. So, but
all right, Dave, and thanks to everyone listening once again here at the Scarlet Faithful.